Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Those who are watching me right now, or you are in the call with me, or maybe you're going to watch this talk later. Today, I'm going to talk about the most controversial topic in Flutter world, or maybe in many applications, not just Flutter, state management. And I will explain to you like why I chose this and what is my approach on that. So, when you start a project, sooner or late, you're gonna need like somehow some type of a state management. So your application grows, your needs and requirements also grows, and then you need more advanced stuff, to manage your state. But how should you do that? How should you choose an state manager? What is the best one for your application? So these are the things that I'm going to talk about it today. So first of all, I will walk you through the architectural thinking, and then we're going to talk about Flutter state management, different possibilities, and then we're going to talk about some characteristic of architecture and how an architect can decide based on those characteristics. So before that, again, let me introduce very quickly myself. My name is Majid, and you can find me on internet by this handler MHIDaily everywhere, LinkedIn, Twitter, wherever you want to find me. And I'm a Google developer expert for Flutter and a passionate software engineer and a solution architect at the moment in Telia. So let's get started. And that's the main reason I chose this topic, architecture or thinking. Most of the things that you'll hear from me, at least in the first part, is you can find them mostly on this book, which is a great book if you are a software engineer and you have not done any software architecture before. You want to get into the software architecture, so I strongly recommend you to read this book, Fundamentals of Software Architecture. So there are 3 points that is mentioned in the book generally. So one of them is that architecture is all about trades-off, right? So, and one more important thing is that you need to take into account the business drives. And I also added team drives because we're going to talk about it more into the team level today. And at the end, you need to have a breadth of knowledge. I'll explain all of this very quickly so that all of us will be on the same page, what really this stuff means. Let me give you a real example. So I was flying actually a couple of weeks ago to London to give this talk and to the RateConf, and I was like looking at the aircrafts after a couple of years, like maybe 2 years not traveling, and then I realized that this is a very good example for architectural thinking, because an aircraft, usually what we see is it has like the engines below the wings, right? And there are some aircrafts which is probably you haven't seen very often, is those aircrafts that have the engine on top of the wings. In fact, when I researched, I realized that there are also some aircrafts that they have embedded engines to the wings, and some other type as well. It was funny to research that because as an architect, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking like, okay, which one is better? Than why I'm seeing always like maybe wings or engines on the wings? Why not others? When can we use that one and this one? Which one is better, really? So let's have. I actually researched a bit, and I will talk about 3 factors right now: safety and structural strengths and maintenance. When I researched, I realized that so when you have the wings under the engine, it seems like this is the most safest or like the securest way to architecting an aircraft or putting the engine below the wings. The reason is that it's a little bit further from the cabin and also the gas, so tank. So in case of any emergency or any problem firing, so it's less problematic. And also when it's has like some kind of problem with engines, so the aerodynamic of the aircraft, it's easier to handle apparently. So these are the research things that I found in my research. And also when you have the wings under the, sorry, you have the engines under the wings, definitely you can you can have more engines or even bigger engines. So it's more flexibility here. And on the other hand, because these uh, let me talk about this first. Maintenance of these engines is also seems to be easier. The reason is that because the engines are closer to the ground, so the maintainers can usually work, on engine and do something with it. But then, obviously, if I ask you a question right now after this topics or these criteria that I mentioned, which one is better? You might say, probably if the engine is below the, wings is the best, right? But there are other factors that I also found in my research. One of them is aerodynamics, for example, and that also leads to the cost. So let me talk about it a little bit. It seems like when you have the engines on top of the, on top of the wings, so the aerodynamic or the physics that is just handling the air for the aircraft, it's much more flexible, which means that you consume less energy, and that is like leading to cost. So it's less costly, at least in terms of fuel, right? When you have this engine below the wings, though, there are a couple of other problems here as well. For example, so when you sit behind or like the seats end of the aircrafts, you hear the sound and noise of these engines louder, while when they are on top of the wings, apparently it's less noisy. And there is also one more problem with the wings when they are under the wings, and it's because it's closer to the ground, they're actually absorbing more dust, and that leads to more maintenance, and again that increases the cost, while when the engine is on top or embedded, that's not the case. So after hearing this, then now the question is, which one is better? Well, all architects usually tell you two words, which is so irritating and boring, right? They gives you this answer. It depends. But it depends because in the world of architecture, everything is a trade-off. If like having safety and also maintenance more important for like that aircraft, then probably you should put the engine below the wings. But if cost is the most important things, perhaps, or maintenance cost is the most important things, then you probably need to do the other way, like put it on top. There is one more thing that architects should know here is that, you know, you or all of us are pretty good at some specific knowledge or technical, that's what we call it, technical depths, right? We're very good at one skills or a couple of skills. And when it comes to the architecting an application, or let's say architecting a software, then the stuff that you don't know, it's very important. That is what we call it, technical breeds. You need to learn more and more, even though you're not specialized on that. You need to learn a lot of things and know a lot of information that is impacting your decision. Let me give you an example. Well, I hope that I was in the venue today. That was the plan, to be honest, but I couldn't make it. But if I was there, the question was here: who knows right now what is triple pattern or segmented state pattern? If anyone knows, just let me know in the comment. It's it is it is quite interesting, right? Because that is the part I'm talking about. This is the technical brief. So if you want to talk about like making a decision about an estate management, which one is better, then you need to have a breadth of knowledge. You need to know most of them. Just knowing two or one or hearing about some stuff and making decision is not particularly a good reason for your application. In fact, this is mentioned right into the documentation of Flutter state management under options. So the last one is this pattern. All right, why I'm saying this? When I'm talking about Flutter state management, then there are lots of things, but I'm going to give you an example about an application that I was creating. So what the application that I was creating was a coffee application. So a simple application that had like a login, a registration, a home screen, menu screen. You move to different screens. You have support, logout, and etc. and etc. I wanted to choose which state management I need to have for this application and see what I have done for making my decision. First of all, I started to thinking like, okay, I can actually, based on my current knowledge, I can have maybe states per screen, maybe, or maybe I can have a state as a single object globally and then share it across the screens. And well, which one was better? It depends. Well, I was not really sure which one is better. So I said that, okay, maybe I should go and, have a diagram here and say, okay, I need to understand these states, who or which widgets are requiring these states. For example, if all widgets or most of the widgets or some of the widgets are requiring a state, then that is app state. That's what we call it, app state, right? We treat that differently compared to when only one single widget requires an state. That is a ephemeral state. So it's a temporary state requiring only by one widget. It's absolutely correct or okay to have state management, temporary state management for one single widget if any other widget doesn't need that state. Okay, but then I had a lot of options. That's the most difficult part, especially for those who are coming to Flutter and say, oh, what should I do? I see provider, Riverpod, blog, Getit, Mobix. I know you set a state or inherited widget. I have Redux. Well, which one should I use really? And if actually I give you this picture, which is made by a friend of me and a good member of community, Mike. So you see that the options are more than 30. It's impossible to go and actually cover all of them, right? So if you want to make a decision, it takes forever to just test every single one, read about it, research about it, and then find out which one is better for you. But then I said to myself, well, I have these 30 options. Oh, that's good. By looking at, the description of these, the README of these at least packages, I can do something here. Let me give you what I've done. I said I can categorize these state management into 3 different categories. Those packages that are based on Flutter features, like for example, provider based on inherited widget, or those packages that are kind of conveying the reactive programming base, for example, Mobix or Block. It's like using a lot of streams, or those packages that are inspired by functional programming, for example, Redux. Then, or maybe some of them. So these are the things that I could categorize them. I said now, okay, based on this and a couple of other factors, probably I can narrow down my list for comparison. Okay. How did I narrow down my list? I said, these are top 30 state management. All right. So then I need those packages that are widely used. So maybe most stars, most used GitHub stars and likes on pub.dev, some indications that are widely used. And it was very important for me that that the package has code coverage over 70% at least. So I didn't want to use any package that has less than that. I also wanted a package that somehow just do only a state management. I just didn't want to use a package that does a couple of other things. I just needed an state management solution. And also a dependency injection probably was a plus. It was not a requirement. So if the package, for example, together with another solution can give me both, it was a good solution for me. I read the documentation and wanted to know that if these packages have good documentation, and and most importantly, if these packages are active in terms of maintenance. And I could narrow down my list to 7 or 6 options. And I started to making my characteristic to compare them. But here is the part. I told you that the architects are trying to value the business drive, right? It's very important because we are creating a software that gives some value to business. We're not just creating software. We will create a software for fun, for sure. I mean, but the point here is that at the end of the day, it has some value to deliver. So as of the characteristic of the architecture characteristic of a software, usually architects are very fond of Elitis word. They say scalability, adaptability, testability, productive, let's say, I don't know, agility or simplicity, But these are the terms that architects understand, or maybe developers can also relate to that. But business, they want more precise, and they want the same language that they can understand, not the language that architect talks. So then it's important when you are talking to your PM or maybe other folks from business side especially, I have this map of like what does it mean when we say scalability of this package. For example, it means if later we want to add more and more and more features, can we extend that? Can we adopt that? Can we, in terms of Flutter developers, concerns, does it have a lot of boilerplate because it just takes so much time to extend it, or is it easy to extend quickly? Just create a class and do something with it. How about the maintenance? Is it easy? The time to market, it just can be mapped to agility or testability or deployability. Like, so business say we want something very fast. And on the other hand, Flutter developers or developers say, yeah, can we easily learn it? Can we easily set that up? Can I just quickly do that in my application and run it? Or customer satisfaction in business terms, or dev satisfaction in this case, which can be some concerns in development. For example, does this package come with code generation? Do I like code generation? Does my team like code generation at all? Does it come with a dev tools or a good example or documentation? Because these are the terms that makes my team productive, and it makes it easy to handle errors or test the package. And at the end, the timing and budgeting, because the more complex the package is, of course, the more knowledge and requirement you need in terms of your Flutter concerned teams. And that means simplicity characteristic in architecture. But let's have a look at that. These are the list, my list that is narrowed down. So the first option was, of course, set state. I realized that set state is a valid choice. So many people quickly skip over that, but in fact, you don't need to. So maybe you need that. Let's compare it. I started to reading some documentation as well as code, and also implementing some of these already. I also had some knowledge about these packages, so it was easier for me to make this decision or this comparison chart. But in fact, you don't need to write a code in each of these slides that I'm going to show you, these packages. You can also go to, there are some repositories on GitHub that you can read about the architecting of your application based on each of these packages. And I think that the name is architecture of a Flutter architecture or something like that by Brian. So you can actually find that. It's already linked in my slide, so you can get it later as well. So when I checked this state management, I realized that this is actually a perfect choice for ephemeral states, like I mentioned in earlier, right? And it's a very good example for a rapid prototyping. So I don't need to learn anything because it comes with Flutter quickly. Well, but there are some downside also to it. The trade-off here is that it's not very testable. It's not very scalable. If I want to pass down states to very nested children down to the widget tree, it's a little bit cumbersome. It's hard. It's very complex. But on the other hand, the adaptability or agility is quite high because, as I said, it comes with a framework. I started to checking provider and change notifier, which gives you this state management. I'm not going to talk about this because the author of provider, Remy, mentioned several times, especially mentioned to myself personally, that he does not recommend provider anymore. Instead, he recommends Riverpod, which is a new package by him. And as he said, maybe provider 2.0. So that is the good provider. So let's talk about this instead then. I started to looking at the Riverpod. So it was very simple, but not as simple as set a state. There was some learning curve there. So how things work, I needed to read documentation and see examples, and maybe dig into the code a little bit, understand how things working. Of course, it made me productive, but not as productive as I was with the native set state. It came with a very fantastic testing kit, which gives me a confidence that I can test everything. And it seems to be very scalable to me, at least when I read the documentation and write some code with that. So, but there are also some downside to it. For example, maybe not most of my teams are familiar with the pattern or the package, so they need some time to learn it, to learn the best practices and things like that, right? So I came up with some suggestion, like uh, where you should use Riverpod even. Like maybe most of application can use it, but then in fact, if you do not have maybe reactive approach, that's the best things to use. Maybe because then if you have a reactive programming approach in your application, you have a WebSocket, you need real-time, flow in your application, data flow. That's probably you need to go back to the reactive programming category that I mentioned and check those packages. And block is actually from that category. So I started to look into that. I had some experience with it. And based on that, I gave some ranking here. I said, oh, that's, to be honest, it's not very simple. The idea for my team, they need to understand it. So it's a bit hard to start probably, but it's highly testable because it comes with, let's say, a good kit, and it's highly scalable. It's a very, very good solution for a big application, especially if you have stream and observable or reactive programming pattern in your application. But on the other hand, maybe because it's complex and it comes with a lot of boilerplate, it makes you less productive or less agile, maybe. I started to look into the MobX, another one from this category, the reactive programming category. It was simpler than Block, of course, and then it made me more productive. The testing, well, it was kind of in middle. I had some glitches, but most of the time it was okay. And then, well, I realized that the pattern is easier to understand, while at least compared to maybe block, which is another competitor of this category. And it's also scalable. It's quite good for especially medium to large application. But especially if you're a fan of code generation, that comes with code generation, maybe that's something that you like. But personally, me and my team didn't like code generation, so then we skipped that as well. Well, I didn't skip actually. We just had some observations. Redux was another one. It's, well, again, it was not simple for app developer to understand the idea. It was perfect for the team that maybe comes with a lot of web developers, or especially medium to large applications. It's quite good. It comes from functional approach with a concept of pure function and immutability, which is very good. But at the same time, comes with a lot of boilerplate and codes that you need to write, because, well, in Dart, writing things similar to JavaScript, it's not as easy as we think. So it's a little bit more work. So it makes us a little bit less productive, perhaps, for that particular application that I showed you, MJ Coffee app. And then the last one was Getit together with Getit mixing. So these are all the packages that I told you. I narrowed them down, and this is the last one. It was pretty simple. The Getit comes with an idea of like service locator, service locating. And then if you don't like perhaps context, or you want to just get your service very quickly with service locator, together with mixing, makes it a very good state management. It's pretty simple to start up and running. It might come with some glitches in testing, but still very testable, and makes you very good and productive. Maintaining that is not that hard because it's less work, less code to write, and perhaps it makes you even agile. So, but then I made this chart then at the end. So I started to look into the 6 or 7 solutions. I actually crossed provider here because I said we need to switch to Riverpod. And then based on this, now that it's the time that I want to make decision. Which one of these is better for me? Well, I added some characteristic, right? What I want technically, what I wanted in my application, because I wanted to create my application in a day. I want to just quickly get it done, or maybe day or two, I mean, very fast. And now I wanted to choose which one gives me the agility, and it's simple. So I don't need to go and read a lot on these packages to understand how they work. I just didn't want to play around with it, right? Just I want my team and myself become very productive and agile to get this application out. So you may guess right now, based on this criteria, which one comes to my application, right? Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Majid, but we are running out of time. So it
Sure.
would be
No, I'm
great if you
done.
could wind up. Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Yes, I am done. So yes, the only thing I wanted to tell you is that when you're talking about state management, you just think about it depends, because actually it's very irritating, but actually really depends. And as I showed you, make these comparison and make sure that you choose the best that is working for your application and that particular application that you are deciding upon. Thank you very much.